and welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. This is number 48. I'm Shane, that's Daragh, and we're happy to be back. Apologies again for a little bit of a gap in missing the last few weeks, but logistical nightmares around here have made it impossible to do a podcast and missed it.
Remains an irritating time of year for to be setting up all this, but
yes, it does. Yeah,
exceptions are made for Champions Cup finals.
Champions Cup finals are very much the exception, and we're gonna be basically diving straight into that. We're gonna the bulk of the show is going to be devoted to the Champions Cup final, and it's the one that many people have been waiting for years. We have Leinster Saracens in a somewhat neutral venue.
We're delighted to announce also that the Overlap Rugby podcast will be sending its first reporter to a Champions Cup final.
That's exactly right.
Myself.
Him, not me.
May, put the notebook and pen to one side for it to be having a few pints and a few yells at Leinster. And
you could bring the notebook with you and do some stuff as well. That would be nice.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? I don't know if any of that's
reflections on it afterwards, but
maybe stranger things have happened.
Yeah, this is it. But yes, he's going to be at St James's Park, which is where it's all going to be going down. And yeah, Leinster v Sarries, which we kind of got a curtain raiser to it last year in what I kind of consider the de facto final. Even though the final itself was very competitive and it's like not selling Racing short, but I kind of figured the winner in Dublin that day would go on and win the tournament, and so it proved, which in that instance was Leinster. But home advantage was a big thing.
100%
bagging that try early on was a big thing.
Yeah.
Setting Sarries off on a kind of off-kilter start where they have to chase a game, which is something that they just very rarely have to do.
They were quite good in that game, though. They were defensively very solid.
There were periods towards the end of the first half where they were really getting on top in the collision zone as well, despite Leinster's pack being phenomenal. Like Sarries' pack or something
Leinster's
else.
Scramble D saved them quite a bit in that game.
Yeah.
And Saracens were just a little bit exposed. They've done a very good job all year of keeping their defensive shape very wide, maintaining their width no matter what in defence. Wingers are hugging touch lines that you can't get outside them, and Leinster went through the middle of them ultimately with a cute little play between Levy and Ryan.
Yeah,
and
the pick and jams
broke the back of the game
as well. It genuinely know the Leinster did their homework on them and kind of moved them around. But it was a probing, interesting game where they're two very, very clever, very, very good sides, and head and shoulders above what else is in this tournament, barring maybe Toulouse.
On their day
in France,
with
I think like Toulouse still have. Like there were some threat coming to Dublin as a Leinster fan. Like you were quaking in your boots, thinking about all that can happen coming over. But ultimately, they're not as mature a side as this Sarries side are.
No.
And it felt like even when Sarries were coming to Dublin last year, they were a little bit off. There were things like Billy Vunipola wasn't quite in form, or he was just back.
They were not in the same position that they are this year. Where they
or the
really
ones they had been in the
like
years where they won it.
Yeah.
But like this is all going back the last few years, so this whole squad now is very much mature. And even we were watching some of the Premiership stuff from the weekend, like they're very similar to Leinster in that like when they have a match day like they had at the weekend just gone, Leinster obviously didn't, but you see like they're in finals mode, so all their main players are on the touchline and you see their B team and it's stellar, and you're thinking like we were saying we forgot they have like the likes of Marcelo Bosch in their ranks to bolster the centres because he doesn't get game time in the first team, and it's a scary prospect. And they're very, very efficient in what they do. Their shapes and patterns have been kind of implemented over years now.
It's eerily similar to what Leinster looked like. I mean, initially there was a little bit more when they were bursting onto the scene. Leinster were sort of more in Matt O'Connor years, and when Leinster rediscovered their flair in 2017, that was very much more loosey-goosey. It's very much more heads-up rugby going on. It was just about, getting the skill set going and getting sticking passes and playing attacking rugby. And then last year it matured into a more settled system, and this year has been similar. But Saracens now look very similar to Leinster. I mean, we talk about clashes of styles in big games. These two teams play very similar brands of rugby. They break teams down in similar ways. They can go multi-phase. They can go strike. They probe you and keep you thinking and keep you honest in defence, but they have no issues holding the ball for long periods of time.
They have capable kickers if it becomes about points accrued.
They can take it to a power game. They can chip over penalties. They both have very solid set pieces and line out drives, and can hold the ball on you. They can pick and jam, or they can score quick tries with their backline moves, and they're happy to do any of them. It's very much watching them attack. Watching Leinster attack, I guess, can be a little more like in that Toulouse game in January in the RDS. There was a purpose to it to break the back of the Toulouse defenders, to hold the ball and kill them, where Saracens, all the time that they're attacking, they're probing for weakness, really, and they're looking for that hole. They're comfortable holding the ball, but they are looking to break the back of it.
Putting the likes of Farrell in that decision-making role where he has 3 to 6 options sometimes if he fancies the 40-yard pass or the kick as well, and it's normally he picks the right one when they're in flow and when they're winning contacts and moving forward in that little kind of swarming flow that they can get going on, where it's just a tide that comes across, and it's like only through good line speed. We saw in the semi-final, Munster managed to stymie them
Chris
for
Farrell
a half.
was sensational.
Chris Farrell was sensational. The 13 channel is going to be key, which like Ringrose is very often a good reader of the game. Henshaw, Ringrose, both very good defensively off the ball. They'll need to be, because the shapes they'll be presented with are full of deception and speed and power.
Yeah, and options. And then they flood certain channels, like that Rhodes try was a classic of just flooding the one channel with three players
into a two defender channel and pick the right pass.
They make those reads seemingly independently but very quickly, and then attack and isolate where the space is, and they're just very, very good at doing that. So it does become a game of stopping them at source, and line speed and read making is massive in defence.
True.
And from Leinster's perspective, huge areas in where to shut down Saracens. Their initial carry game, I mean, they have a load of big men doing big men things. You're going to need that tight 5 to step up. I would definitely lean towards, you have your Ryan and Dev in the row, but getting Scott Fardy in there probably from the start.
At 6, which worked very well against Toulouse.
It did indeed.
That little balance that we're looking at Sean O'Brien this season and thinking he's probably not quite reached the heights that he had, but his best game of the year was definitely that Toulouse game where he had Scott Fardy and Jack Conan there. It was a good little balanced back row to it. They complemented each other pretty well.
They all played very well.
Which is going to need to happen again. Because you're looking at the Saris like Rhodes and Ray are in great form this year, and obviously Vunipola is a barnstorming carrier, offloader extraordinaire, and then you look in their rows and you're seeing Cruz Itoji. Like Itoji goes through periods in games, 10-minute phases in games where he's literally unstoppable. It happens like seemingly every time he takes the field.
A lot of that work on Billy and Billy and Itoji, it's double team work or James Ryan work for Leinster. I mean, James Ryan's going to have a lot of serious defensive job on his hands around those fringes just to stop and force back Saracens. The back row and the Fardy, Fardy's quite an in-tight guy, but you do need somebody up in Farrell's face. I don't know who they're going to nominate to do that. Obviously it sucks that there's no Josh and there's no
this is it, they're lacking a 7 for that, which is actually it's interesting because both sides will be probably lacking an out-and-out open side. It'll be a final without an out-and-out open side flanker in it, which is interesting. Could mean there'll be a lot of multi-phase.
And I think Levy was very much a difference maker in that win that Leinster had over Saracens in last season's competition. So it's a curious one, and it just makes the task for Leinster's defence in terms of stymieing what Saracens do in attack that more difficult, because they're going to need somebody to bull rush Farrell, but also that the Jackal game probably isn't going to be there to the prominency that you would like it.
No.
And so it becomes a game of, as Munster did, stopping them behind the game line. The problem that Munster had in that game is that they just couldn't maintain their discipline when they did it. I mean, they shut down Saracens.
And they couldn't score tries. That's a failing that I don't think Leinster will share.
No. But I mean, in terms of what their defensive work was doing, I think Saracens had 9 or 12 points at half time when they had been shut out by Munster, and it was just silly. All of the penalties were not enforced. They were just silly penalties. So if Leinster can model themselves on that and just hold a bit of discipline, that's where you start getting a winning combination.
Because Saris can speak endlessly to their credit, but they do concede a few penalties. That's actually it's in their DNA to do so as well. Their discipline isn't as tight as I would.
When they're put under pressure, they do.
It's very rare that you see a Leinster side can slip up discipline wise and give up a load of penalties. That being said, it has happened a few times this year. Leinster's squad rotation has meant there's been a few stop-start performances a lot this year, more so than Saris, even with their
100%. We were very sceptical of where Leinster were at, especially just post Six Nations, and how deflated a lot of those test players were right up until that Toulouse game, where Leinster, as they do, book national trends and put together a stellar performance.
Yeah, but if you're looking at form guides into this, obviously a final separate, so you don't know, but the last game Leinster played was a rather tame defeat with the B side, obviously up in Kingspan,
it's not
whereas Saracens send out their seconds against Exeter and absolutely put them to the sword.
It's a good picture for Saracens.
It is.
The last game that the Leinster firsts played was that game against Toulouse, and that's crucial. But it does have the addendum that it was back in the comfort zone, in the sense that it was a game in Dublin against the French side, which they're very comfortable winning. They know how to go there, but they know how to go to finals and win as well. That's in their DNA.
Well,
as well.
Leinster have yet to lose a final in Europe anyway.
And some of these guys, Johnny Sexton and Rob Kearney, have been there for all of them.
Yeah,
4 from 4 in European finals, and looking to make it 5 from 5. I mean, they have, and you can see the Leinster teams go to the sort of bank and the history, the archives of where they've been and what they've won in those big games, and finding big moments. It's
one of those kind of form is temporary, class is permanent kind of arguments, and it rings true when you're looking at a Leinster team.
I think it'll play to Leinster's advantage if it's tight and it gets to late in the game.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think that'll be where Leinster may see it out, as they did last year, and just find a way to get over the line. I think they're more likely to do that than Saracens. But I think the bigger question is what happens in that first 60 minutes. What picture are we left with 20 to go? I mean, there's so many different interesting battles. I mean, we were talking yesterday, just jokingly, like, if you were to pick a mixed Saracens and Leinster team,
who would you pick?
You start straight away with Loosehead, and you're stumped. Yeah. Because you have Cian Healy, who is, for my money, the best Loosehead perhaps ever to grace the rugby world with his presence. Yeah. And then Mako Vunipola, whose improvement this year from a pretty healthy base has been insane.
Well, his in the loose play has always been phenomenal for Lucy, but his scrummaging is what's impressed me this year. Yeah, and he's always been. There's been question marks about that, certainly in my mind, where people have got the better of him in that area before, and it seems like a conscious effort on him to grow in that area. And whereas with Cian, like, he's a monster in that area.
Yes,
and he has been taking names for years, and longevity wise, he's been around for the better part of a decade. Yeah, doing so.
Indeed, but in the context of this game, you have two just phenomenal loose heads. And listen, as good as Tadhg Furlong is, John Ryan is probably he's not as bulky a man nearly as Tadhg Furlong, but he's the best technical scrummager, I would say, in Europe. And I've never seen him sort of manhandled the way Mako manhandled him in that semi-final, and it really did hurt Munster. Yeah, just John Ryan going backwards in the scrum is not a healthy picture for them, and it's not a usual picture for them.
No, it's not.
Indeed, he came on at the weekend against Benin and proved just how useful he can be. Yeah. But against Mako Vunipola, there was one winner, and he's been nominated for European Player of the Year, and I think I'd favour him to win it, just because
props never win
it, and his level of improvement in his performance is huge, and that is a colossal battle, because Tadhg Furlong is someone in the scrum who uses his weight to enormous effect, but Mako's a heavy chap as well. I mean,
they kind of cancel each other out on that front.
It's going to be interesting.
Strength then, because like obviously Tadhg Furlong has that quirky farmer strength.
He does, and I was nervous about Tadhg once upon a year in his scrummaging, but he's been pretty flawless this year. Yeah. But it is a step up in challenge from Mako. Like he's going to.
Well, the weight in that pack as well is something else. Like you're getting driven from behind by Cruz Itoji, and then off the bench at 60 minutes comes that big monster Will Skelton as well. So it's like, and their whole back row is huge. The Saris are a bigger team. That's one thing that's true. Yeah. So if Leinster are a little bit off, the collision zone will be won by Saris, and that's going to be inevitable. Like this is where, like, if it's tight, that's great. I think I agree with you that's great for Leinster. Leinster will probably be the ones to find the break, but both teams are of such a calibre that if one of them's a little off, either one could grab a 2-try lead very quickly. It's not going to be like the Munster game where it's tight for so long because of just the way Munster approached the game entirely. Like Leinster won't approach the game that way, so there's bound to be a little bit more space on the field, just because of that. So it could be a case of one try or one team grabbing a couple of tries and then the other team having to chase.
Yeah, but even last year, which was like that when Leinster took a lead, like Saracens had big moments and fired some serious shots. Yeah, and it was Leinster's scrambled E that kept them in it, and then you would expect something similar no matter who takes the lead. Like it's not going to be 80 minutes of one-way traffic. They're too similar and too good all over the park.
It's such a fascinating. I'm so glad it's the final of, and I think it's been a great tournament this year, to be honest. Like if you just think reflections on how they got there, the two semi-finals were great in different ways, And both teams showed their class, showed the distance basically between them and the rest of Europe in those semi-final
there were certainly
performances.
seeds 1 and 2 as the year started, and
Proven so. Bookies kind of know what they're on about in some of these things. Like Munster did very well, I thought, to get to a semi, all things considered.
Toulouse's stock has risen dramatically.
Toulouse has been like nothing but progress. They actually remind me of Leinster's campaign 2 years hence, when they had to go to Clermont, didn't quite get it, got caught early on, and they couldn't do it. But a young, exciting team with a lot of potential. So like Toulouse could be genuine contenders next year. They were already genuine contenders this year, but like if they continue that rate of growth, if they manage to close out the top 14, they could be genuine rivals next year. But this was a year too soon, and it's Leinster Sarries have been head and shoulders the best teams in the comp for the whole season. When you think back to Sarries going to Glasgow before Christmas and shutting what was a very dangerous and buoyant Glasgow team, still is. Like when you look into the form they're getting into come finals mode, like they're fire really, and they were coming into that with loads of good form. In the Pro 14 as well, top of their conference, going into
they played about as well as they can play in that game,
and only scored 3 points
at home,
which is something
that's something that doesn't get, like, it used to get talked about a lot with when Jacques Berger was in Saracens, and they had the whole Wolfpack identity going on.
Him and Scalp Brits, shooting up out of line.
Yeah, it used to be all about like that Wolfpack defence, and but it's sort of eased off as we've just seen the silk of their attack and Farrell dictating what they do. But their defence, even against Munster, was against admittedly a limited attack, was pretty sensational. Their line speed, like everyone gets away with offside, so you've no issues with it these days. But their line speed is seriously, it shuts you down. And it creates an interesting picture from Leinster's perspective in terms of what Leinster are going to do with the ball. You know, they're probably going to pick Luke McGrath, which stymies their ability perhaps to move the ball quickly. Obviously they've a lot of potential in that back line, but they are a team, and Johnny Sexton's an out half who likes to have a bit of go forward before he goes and does his thing. He likes to see his pack moving forward to give him that bit more space for to move the ball. And then if Leinster are going backwards in those tights, if Saracens are getting out and shutting Leinster back and driving them back, the instinct is to kick, and then you've got guys like Alex Good and Liam Williams back there. You're just not going to find space.
No,
they're
or grass.
Yeah, they're just very elite covers of the field and catchers of the ball, and then counter attackers when they get it. So that's a dangerous picture for Leinster, and it creates an interesting dilemma for what they do with the ball. How do they exit? What do they want to?
They want to be getting the ball into Jimmy Lowe's hands as fast as possible by going sitting Sexton slightly deeper, getting wider. Possible.
I think
do they
probably,
want to, or do they want to be doubling back inside with little inside balls and try and keep that defensive line a bit more honest? A lot will come down to Brad Barrett, whether he can play or not. I hope he can.
I think he can.
He only managed a half of rugby against Munster before having to go off.
Yeah, that's right. Actually,
and he was brilliant in that half and very physical. But it seems like the years have taken
it on for him, though. He played well.
It was Tompkins.
And
Tompkins has been great this season. But anytime they start Tompkins, that defence that you're like really complimenting, there's a slight softness to.
And that's on the outside the 13 channel.
Yeah. But I'm pretty confident in putting Brad Barrett as one of the reasons there. Like, Brad Barrett doesn't get anywhere near enough praise for what he does for that team, but like his defensive work and just the physicality with which he does everything, like on and off the ball, he's
technical as well. Like he smashes guys, but you never see Brad Barrett make like a crazy shoulder charge,
or he doesn't run headfirst into a knee very often. You know, like he's very technical, but also very physical. He understands the need to be, even when he's probably carrying a little bit of niggle, he still gets stuck in there, which is kind of similar to, if you think East and Asiwa, thinking more parallels between these two teams. East and Asiwa last year from 12 was patched together like the Bionic Man, but was still putting in ferocious hits, even if he could only manage 30 minutes in a game. But it was like he's a big club man for them, and I think his presence there kind of glues everything together in that back line and really does make their defence near impenetrable unless you're very, very accurate and sharp. And that's going to be the challenge for both. It's going to be a matter of who gets that in the final, because we've seen, even if you think to last year, like Leinster's attack was phenomenal all year, then got to the final and kind of stalled. So it's very hard to even take precedent from what's come before going into a final, which is something all of its own. And it's going to be about who arrives there on the day more accurate and determined.
From Leinster's perspective with the ball, it's got to be either attack that 13 channel instantly, as you say, get outside of that blitz, or if you're carrying in the tight, you got to be smart. You got to pick runs off each other, and you got to offload the ball.
Yeah,
it's crucial. I mean, that's where Sarries break games up, is that they get Itoje and Billy Vunipola in those channels, and even with Ryan on them and getting double teamed, you get the feeling that they're going to get their hands free, and it just shakes up the defensive line a little bit if you can get a quick.
Well, it's very hard to have line speed or any kind of press when you're watching that and half expecting a break to come any second.
Exactly.
Like, it's very hard to get off the line with any kind of commitment, and as soon as you're not doing that, then Farrell's picking these great passes with these great shapes. So it's, as you say, a probing attack that's designed not necessarily with strike moves off first phase all the time. It's more about a sweeping multi-phase that's pulling you this way, then that, inside, then out,
just testing for weaknesses and then finding them inevitably, usually. And without a turnover game, it becomes, from Leinster's perspective, very much about line speed, double teaming the right guys. But then when they do have the ball themselves, they're going to need to respond, and they're going to need Leinster players to step up, and somebody's going to have to take that Billy Vunipola role, get it into the contact, get the hands free, be a danger. And certainly that was a recipe for success for them in the fringes last year, when Saracens were trying to shut them out, and instead Leinster went back inside them. Saracens do have a better line speed this year. They're more aggressive in defence this year than they were last year. Last year they were very much all about sweeping and
getting width, whereas as we saw in the Glasgow games this year, apart from the first one, the other two Glasgow games that they've had, madly enough, but they were caught out wide a few times, which wouldn't have happened last year.
Exactly.
Against last year, we were saying, and actually it kind of rang true in that first game as well, that Glasgow, despite being a quality team, them going up against Sarries is like the worst matchup for them. Because Sarries are just going to hold their width, and there's going to be nothing for them out there where they want to go all the time, and so it proved the first time. But then the second few games, obviously, like a little bit of chop chain. They had Alex Good at 10 a few times. They had a few little rotations.
Noticeably adjusted what they're doing with their defence.
Yeah.
Perhaps in part because of that Leinster game and how it did expose them in the narrow channels, and maybe because of one or two losses against Exeter around the turn of the year.
Yeah.
That probably just frustrated them a little bit. They've decided to solidify
narrow. Yeah.
And then,
well, for such a big pack, it's probably frustrating to be leaking kind of forwards tries in those areas, I'd imagine. So they probably want to shore that up. Also, you don't want to be rewarding Exeter's tactics with yielding any tries, as they showed at the weekend. Their B team shutting them out, turning them over, and grabbing tries.
It was an excellent and scary look of a team that's focused and in control and in form, and that's it's a dangerous prospect for anybody.
That's where, like, being Leinster fans as we are, it's been very hard to make head nor tail of this year. A lot of the time, like, we haven't been seeing the A team in action at all, so it's just been a rotation of not quite full B teams, but just different teams, which means different looks all the time, and good performances, bad performances, shaky results ever since but it's all coming from a place of being top of your league table, secured outright with weeks to go. So and getting into the business end of the season where everyone else is do or die, and you're just throwing the B team out there. Like, obviously that's going to yield,
to be fair, like,
a few losses.
That game against Ulster, I think, was the Ulster kind of got away with one, really. Against
True. There was a drop goal there to be approach, but
I thought there were a couple of refereeing decisions as well. I thought young Leinster probably did enough to win that match, but it's been a different approach from Leinster, in part because it's a World Cup year, in part because you lost a guy like Issa. You're still in this limbo land with the three imports. The replacement of Issa in Joe Tamani hasn't really panned out, so they've just had to throw a bunch of young guys in, and the national guys are being protected. I mean, they don't want Johnny Sexton playing really more than 1 or 2 games a month, and he hasn't. But we all, and this is what they lean on, is that they know when it gets to finals footy, they can have all the time in the world to prepare and they can come out and play very well, and it just seems to work with Leinster. I'm yet to see it. We haven't seen in a very long time the picture of that not working in a really big game that really matters for Leinster. And while we did get that picture in an Ireland jersey, I'm curious to see what it'll look like this week. I mean, it's definitely the toughest. It's definitely the best team. Like, it's not been the most difficult run for Leinster to a final, but it's the best team that they've faced in a final for sure.
Northampton, Ulster,
Leicester, and Racing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And the most challenging they found, between Leicester, which was 2009, so that's a completely different era and team, but the Racing game last year was the shakiest Leinster looked all that year.
It was to a poor standard, in fact. It was like they did shut us out, but the game wasn't played to a high standard, and
which can happen in finals. Happens a lot.
I just
two good teams with nerves.
The quality of these two teams, and like if one team plays badly, the other team will get on top of them. Is my suspicion.
Yeah.
But there are huge battles all over. I'm very curious to see what happens at scrum time. Very curious to see if anyone will blink at line-out time. Obviously, I think
that's more likely to be Leinster than
I think so
Sarries,
too.
to be honest.
Whereas
I think the scrum is probably the other way around, just because I'm backing the Cian Healy factor to be aggressive at scrum time.
And they have this lad at Tighthead Saracens, what's his name, the South Sea Island guy, or Vincent Koch, or both of whom can be got at. Probably, what's his name? Lamasatele. He started against Munster and did scrummage very well. It's just Cian Healy's a different animal entirely. But that being said, I still think the most likely set piece malfunction on the whole game is probably Leinster's lineup.
Yes,
but that's why.
I also think the most likely results, rather than malfunction at all, is just solidity in that area for both teams, because we've been working on it now for a whole year, and you know, like both teams appreciate a final enough to be trying to get those fundamentals right. And then it will come down to who blinks first. In some of these exchanges, are the centres going to be capable of shutting each other out? Like, both have challenges. Henshaw was back for the Toulouse game, looked really good with ball in hand.
It was massive. I mean, that James Lowe try that Leinster scored,
beautiful try,
off the scrum. That was like we rave about Saracens' attack. That was as accurate an attacking set as you'd see from even any test team. I mean, it looked sort of like All Black stuff.
10 phases from a scrum in the midfield. It was on the 10th phase that James Lowe crashed.
And all of them were just perfect. And it was actually quite Saracens, but it was probing and it was good. And Cian Healy got the ball just in a semi-wide channel for a little bit, and it looked like he was he had one defender dragging off him, and another defender came sprinting in to shut him out, and he just got an offload away, and they just kept going and picking the pressure. And then, rather like Saracens at the end, Toulouse had Leinster had whatever it was, a 3-on-2, and the first Toulouse defender just shot up on a man, and Leinster, I think it was Luke McGrath, picked the right pass to Sean O'Brien, who put Lowe in, and Lowe obviously beat the last man as he does, and will do again, even when presented with Liam Williams. That's a matchup that Leinster, as good as Liam Williams is with the ball on the ground, not in the air, I think that's a matchup that Leinster will like.
It's true. Whereas on the other wing, to be fair, Larmour didn't actually get as much space. We didn't play him in as much as we did below against Toulouse. He had to, whenever he got the ball, he had like one or two players to beat, and he does amazingly, like wins contacts just with footwork. But we weren't really playing him into danger, into space. So maybe on that other wing, Sarries will fancy their chances. You don't know. It's they're both, they cancel each other out very well. A lot of this team. I'm curious to see how the centre dynamics go, because Barrett Lazowski is quality, as well as Henshaw Ringrose. They're both international calibre centre partnerships, and it's going to be who's winning contacts in those areas, who's actually managing to shoot and shut out the attack first, if we are more effectively, I suppose. Because that'll be down to those 13s, I would imagine, a lot of the time. If they're like going through multi-phase, I'll imagine there'll be many a moment that looks very dangerous until there's a proper shoot that stops everything and goes back to square one, and that was Chris Farrell in the semi-final.
He was brilliant. He was brilliant. Has been for a while. And Gary Ringrose will need to replicate some of that form for sure.
And he's not the physical player that Chris Farrell is. He does make good reads, but he won't be hitting with anywhere near the same.
My instinct tells me that you will get some aerial battles. Are we going to get the Liam Williams or Alex Good versus Rob Kearney matchups in the air?
They're also elite in that area. This is like all, you go through the whole team sheet, and then you go through
every aspect of rugby. I mean, elite level scrummaging, elite level lineouts, elite level mauls. Probably not jackling. There's no pocock in there. That's the only thing that's missing. Is like an actual number 7, like a genuine 7, and Leinster have 2 of them, and they're not there. It's a huge factor. Huge factor. But all over the pitch, attack, defence. This is very high level stuff. High level sides going against each other, and they play so similarly, so it is just a question of which defence can withstand which attack and which defence can't, and
that's where you get the feeling either it'll be a tight one or one of the teams will get on top, and it could end up being...
I think both. I think one team will get on top, but it will end up being tight, if you know what I mean. And just be like, that's 6 points better probably from somebody. My instinct says Saracens to win it. I know that there's a load of factors at play. Leinster obviously with such a great finals reputation, I just think the little thing that Saracens have that Leinster don't have is just that offloading game in the tight and the way that they flood channels, and I just think Leinster may struggle to deal with it, especially with the power that comes on for them in the second half.
Maybe so.
Big games needed for Fardy and James Ryan to shut that
all
out.
of that out.
Yeah,
True. And then you're talking the likes of Jack Conan having to have a big game in the loose as well.
And listen,
to kind of
he's been dynamic in those channels, in the narrow channels as well.
Yeah.
He's not getting too wide, but he is busting through those narrow channels, and that's a winning picture for Leinster.
He'll be against bigger men.
Yeah, who are less tolerant of that kind of behaviour.
Yes, like against French sides, he always seems to play remarkably well. Does Jack Conan seems to have a field day?
But even the best French sides can be dopey around the fringes sometimes.
Always, yeah. Whereas generally, even mediocre English sides do resource that area.
Yeah.
Like that tends to be where they are. So yeah, no, I don't know. My instinct possibly says, like, it's a curious one. I think on finals on the day I would probably back Leinster, but if I'm looking at all the precedent this year, I'm saying that probably Sarries are the team that are edging it as far as who deserves to win.
But it's certainly the cleaner picture, but so was Toulouse. Toulouse was the cleaner. They had been on this journey. They've been putting all these performances together. Leinster have been all over the place. Last time Sexton played for Leinster was the previous calendar year, where he was terrible against Munster and lost the rag. I mean, he's had this awful Six Nations. None of the omens were there, but then the Leinster players clicked into gear. They all got finally. They're all on the pitch together. All of these players with such history, all of these top class players who can beat the All Blacks comfortably on their day, showed up and played accurate football, and Toulouse couldn't cope. And there are very few teams. I've never seen Leinster hit their high flying straps and have a team cope with it.
No, I've yet to see that. Yeah.
And that Saracens could be the team.
It could be. Well, it's a final we've been waiting for so long, and head to head wise, Leinster have the edge. They've 3-0, but 2 of those 3 were against
different era,
a completely different
the only meeting of these two teams, Mark McCall v Leo Cullen, was last year,
and it was in the Aviva.
It was in the Aviva,
which
Dublin
makes
helps Leinster
all the difference in the world. So this in St James's Park. Who knows? It's anyone's guess.
Who knows? It is anyone's guess.
But I do believe it's going to be the highest quality showing of rugby in the tournament so far. Because how could it not be? They're 2 amazing sides. So yeah, come on Leinster.
Come on Leinster. I'll be there repping the Overlap Rugby podcast.
Yes, we'll have ORP representation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose there are other things to briefly discuss.
Well, I want to talk about the Pro 14 for sure.
Yeah.
So
because Pro 14 now is in the postseason properly.
Yes,
we've had everything decided as far as who's in Europe, who's not in Europe, with the big missers out, Edinburgh and Cardiff. Ultimately on the last weekend.
A little note on Edinburgh's season. I mean, sort of the last time we properly discussed them, there was an air of positivity around it. They were trying to compete on. Well, essentially 3 fronts, because they were trying to compete.
Because they were the Six Nations Scotland team.
They were trying to compete in Europe, and they were trying to compete domestically, and then their whole pack went off to
some of their backs.
Darcy Graham and a couple of others.
Blair Kinghorn
obviously has gone injured, and that was a huge loss for them. So they went off and played that Six Nations, and it's just left them. They have picked up a couple of injuries, but it's just left the whole squad looking tired.
Yeah.
And when your team is that physical and relies on that physical edge, tiredness is a killer.
Yeah.
And it started to seep in during the Six Nations. They had that one big performance against Leinster where
that was their pretty much last big performance of the season.
And but like guys like Bill Matta, who was just having to play every single week, and around Christmas time was looking sensational, and now towards the end of the season looked a shadow of the man, and he just couldn't produce the plays anymore. He looked flat-footed, and the whole team did. Like your Tulises and your Gilchrists, who had been so domineering, just lacking that extra edge, just a little bit tired. And that's like it's from Cockrell's perspective, it's a hammer blow. They were in Europe, they were in the quarterfinals of Europe, and now they're right back into the Challenge Cup, where they don't want to be. And it's like a stalling moment, but it's a lesson for him in the sense that he had built a good team. They have their moments, but a bit like Ireland, you need to exert a little less energy to win games, and you need to build a bigger squad than you have, especially if you're going to be bolstering the entire Scotland team.
That's true. Well, that was an exceptional circumstance, the fact that there were so many Glaswegians down. But yeah, it's definitely a learning season for them. Cardiff I was actually rooting for them over Ospreys because I think Ospreys are dismal, and I think they will do nothing should they get to Europe. But I'm hopeful that it's going to be Scarlets instead, who will also probably do nothing.
They may do something.
They may do something more, though. Yeah. I rate them as more of an option.
Cardiff play beautiful attacking footy, but they're flaky. They don't end up winning the games a lot of the time.
Very soft.
Yeah. I mean, they were well and truly put to the sword in European rugby this year. Glasgow and Saracens, they just couldn't compete with.
No, not at all.
And ultimately fell short of European rugby. So that's two good sides from the Pro 14 that have been stymied and that will be in the Challenge Cup next year, which is
well, sure, they should go on and try and win it. As Pro 14 team. No, well, did they last year?
Yeah,
they did. Yeah, Cardiff did.
Yeah.
So we need to have more Pro 14 teams winning the second tier and top tier. It would be lovely.
Yep. The next thing that happened was there were obviously quarterfinals.
The big news being actually the losers of those quarterfinals, Connacht and Treviso. Like, great seasons for both.
Yeah.
Conversely to those two teams, they're now in Europe in the top flight of Europe.
Yeah. It's job done as far as those two teams are concerned.
Yeah. Which ever since the restructure, I think it's the first time for both that they've been in the top tier of Europe.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
Because Treviso obviously used to be there by default.
And Connacht got in a couple of times when Leinster won Heineken Cups for them.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, and well, did they must have qualified when they won the Pro 14. Was that? That was a new era. That was a new structure. So it's not the first time.
Not the first time for Connacht. Yeah, that's right. Actually, yeah. But this iteration of Connacht with
Andy Friend, they're a year in, and that's job done.
Yeah,
and
done a great job.
Yeah, likewise with what's the coach's name again of Benin?
God, he was the Canada.
He's got Kieran Crowley. And he was the Canada coach, and he's done an excellent job. Has to be noted, like the full stop on Treviso's year is that it's been a great year. They've done great things. They competed very heavily. They have perhaps arguably a better team than Italy because they have all the good bits of Italy and then just class wingers who Italy can't call upon to find game breaking plays, but they can. And
they were phenomenal. They should have won that game.
That was what I was going to say. It's like, as much as the full stop is there, that game was there for them. Like, it was a combination of them not taking it and again, questionable calls,
two handling way. Yeah, well, that's been a theme of the season, but Thomond Park factor is going to play a part. But two handling errors from the fatties.
Yeah,
Bramstein though, he's no fatty, and he was dropping the ball. He should be.
He was making good line-out steals, but in that moment, that had to be caught, and I think he knew it.
He did know it.
As it was coming down on him.
And then a few minutes later, there was another one. Two would-be tries, and it's as we know with Munster, as we've been saying all year, their attack is so blunt that if you go 2 scores ahead of them, they're very hard pressed. Like, it'll take them at least 20 minutes to get back into that game because they just don't score tries. They're very bad at scoring tries, and the only tries they have been scoring of late have been questionable, dubious refereeing calls that should be called back.
They're getting away with murder, Munster, and they're their own issue. They're who progress on. Ulster as well progress on. A good win against Connacht minus Stockdale at home. They got something back. I mean, Billy Burns had a horror show.
He did, threw that horrendous intercept at one point, and he doesn't seem to exert that much control.
The biggest thing for Ulster now is that, first of all, European rugby secured. They're helping their seeding every week they survive. They have to go to Glasgow now, and that's a big game for them, probably where it ends. But if they can get Stockdale back, you never know. But they have an elite player in Stockdale, and now they have a very good back row with Coetzee and Geordie Murphy in there. With Timoney, who stepped up as well.
That's been the main improvement of the year, in fact, because it's allowed Henderson to play his game a bit more.
And young Michael Lowry bursting onto the scene, along with
a positive,
the lad on the right wing, Balakoon. So there's a lot of good young players doing class things over in Ulster. So positivity there as well. And as the season wraps up, it's there's a lot of good teams in the Pro 14, and the league is looking strong and colourful. Unfortunately, the Cheetahs couldn't replicate last year's efforts and kind of got swept aside by everybody. And the South African component of the league has some work and rethinking to do.
I think what happened, the Cheetahs are actually a decent attacking side, and it put a jolt of electricity into what was obviously the Celtic League kind of beforehand, and it changed it up, and they caught teams cold, which was good. But I don't think they're that good. And as Super Rugby was demonstrating for years, they're not that good.
We would like to think that it's probably, unless they want to leave Super Rugby and get their actual teams in there, they can probably only put together one team to compete in the Pro 14, and that'll probably have to be looked at.
If you could restructure it and get some of the, if there are any quality kings, I don't know. I haven't. Well, there are some of those.
For sure, yeah. But like it just
the Southern Kings are pointless entity in this competition, really.
Yeah.
Like, and the fact that they're playing each other, the Cheetahs and the Kings, like how many times? Three times over the regular season is a bit skewing.
It's just going on. It's like it feels like another world. Like you're either in midwinter in Europe, and then it's midsummer over there, and they're just playing each other in this game. It's like technically in our league. Yeah, but it's a weird one.
True, yeah. It's watching Munster and Treviso slog it out in the mud. And flip over to the 57-33 game that's going on in the other things. So what? And
they haven't coped well with it, but it's been a very good league and a good league for the Pro 14. We will touch on the Premiership and the Top Tours, which are taking longer to wrap things up.
They always do. They slow roll the end of the season.
The Top Tours final is June 15th.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
What an absolute
It's like
nonsense.
Weeks afterwards.
Yeah. They still have like 3 regular season games to go.
I know.
So I'm gonna.
They really do smash those players, don't they? Like, considering the attritional nature of most of the games, the attritional picture of most of the games over there as well. It is a bit mental.
Yeah. We'll touch on the Top Tours then as the season progresses.
Yeah. Super Rugby similarly, like we've missed a fair bit of Super Rugby in terms of our coverage just because the European kind of stuff's been heating up. But we're appreciating that it's getting not quite the business end of it, but it's heating up into
5 rounds to go. It started in January and they are catching up with the Top Tours.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But there's been a lot of fun games. I love the Sharks on tour. I love the Jags getting
5 wins in a row and now actually competing in the South African Conference.
As it is,
the Lions propping up the bottom of the conference.
Delightful.
Love it. Love everything about that.
Bulls getting some important wins. Rebels still topping the Aussie Conference, but it's all very tight up there.
Brumbies scoring maul tries.
Serious questions for Michael Cheika. Like it is starting to look like the third conference again, just in terms of points accrued. Like if the Jags would be top of the Aussie Conference if they were in it.
Yeah.
So they're still a ways behind, but you never write off Czech in a World Cup year.
Never write off the Aussies in camp putting together a 31-man squad that's competitive, like
100%. Yeah, and there is competitiveness there. They probably will need to draw on Quaid, but it's hotting up. Super Rugby's definitely hotting up, and it's good to see the SAFA teams getting a little bit of form.
Yeah, it's also good to see the New Zealand teams after a bit of sluggish start kind of putting together some of the stuff,
putting together some of those wonderful New Zealand derbies that make this competition what it is.
Was the Highlanders and the Chiefs 31-all. Yeah, beautiful game. What was I going to say? The Premiership was the other one you mentioned, which is like all but certain, I think, now in terms of the finals of it. It looks like that. Well, no, we don't going to be top.
Saracens
last week, Gloucester.
Saracens could catch Exeter if Exeter lose
right.
But Exeter are playing Northampton, who currently sit in fourth in Exeter. So that looks like Northampton are probably going to lose that game, and then Quins are playing Wasps in Coventry, and if Quins win that game, they'll leapfrog Northampton and get into fourth.
Right. So that's the only spot really that's up for grabs.
Yeah, well, Gloucester are definitely third, but if Northampton go and beat Exeter, Saracens could leapfrog Exeter and make the game that I want to happen.
Yes.
Which is Exeter Gloucester in Sandy Park, where Gloucester have won twice this year, and
you just have really do not like Exeter, and really enjoyed watching Sarri's B team take them apart.
And I enjoy watching Gloucester beat them in Europe as well. I think Gloucester are a lovely team.
Yeah, play lovely attacking rugby, whereas Exeter, to be fair, play very little rugby. They just pick and run into you for 80 minutes, and it's only fun.
How can you have Santiago Cordero in your team and play like that? It is a crime against the game.
It's pointless having him there. You may as well be on the bench. He's doing nothing out there. Like,
he's so good. So. But he does do work for them, but like it's all against the plan.
And off the cuff, it's normally him coming in off his wing, getting a ball off 9 and jinking, and then setting up another.
But that too has an issue with just wrapping things up in the sense that they still have another regular season week to go, which I think will be the week after Europe, and then semi-finals and finals. So we'll touch on them.
A staggered. It seems weird to have to go back from Europe, certainly from Sarri
for a regular
season week.
Yeah. Well, that's what the French and British leagues negotiated. They wanted their finals to be at the more businessy end of the season, the last thing that happens, to attract the viewers. But it's still There's no unless you're, I don't know, Lyon or Brive or whatever. There's no real argument that it's a bigger. That either tournament is bigger than Europe, and it's unquestionably easier to win those tournaments than it is to win Europe and the Pro 14. Yeah, they're not in the same league,
not at
as
all.
Evidenced by
Pro 14 seems to be the only ones genuinely accepting of that.
Exactly. Like Glasgow, Exeter, and Cast, they're winners of the domestic leagues that don't have rashers of a hope in Europe.
Yeah,
and that's reality.
Indeed. But it does seem like the Pro 14 is the only ones out and out who accept that. You don't always get a lingering maybe with the Premiership and same.
No, not with teams like Saracens, because Saracens they just know too much, like what they have to go through to win in Europe and what they have to go through to win in domestically. Yes. Like even last year when they were thoroughly beaten by Leinster, they still cheered themselves up by winning their domestic league.
Yes, indeed.
As you do.
Indeed.
As doubtless the loser of the final will do.
Probably. I would actually think the loser of the final is more likely to win
their domestic league.
Whereas the winner can be caught cold, as Leinster have learned before.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Leinster should have too much for Munster. This year's Munster.
No, it's Glasgow who are the danger team.
Yeah,
100%.
Oh, I'm talking semi though.
Yeah,
but in terms of being caught cold, it's more likely to happen in the semi than the final.
It's not just a question of caught cold. It's a question of Glasgow being Tekerful Movos.
No, yes, I know. Yes,
but that's all to be decided. Mm-hmm. The only other thing is there's a Challenge Cup final. We haven't really discussed the Challenge Cup at all this year.
Yeah, we've watched bits of it.
A tier below. We have been watching it.
Yeah,
it's the perfect final for what the tournament has been. Two wonderfully attacking French teams.
Deserving, and they got the better of their English rivals in the semis, which was right as well. They were better teams.
The absolute shame for the tournament that it's like they're two great teams, they're two wonderful sets of fans, and it's thoroughly disappointing. Unfortunately, it's just I'm not saying it as a criticism. It's just reality that the stadium is not going to look well.
St James's Park,
St James's Park is going to be a big stadium, and they're just not going to travel in any kind of numbers for a Challenge Cup final. So they'd be doing well to get 10,000 into St James's Park. They'd be doing very well to get 10,000 into that game. And
I don't know.
Unfortunately, after I don't think so. And after the semi-final, where everything was looking so beautiful in their respective home stadiums, and it was a bit of a lesson to the top tier competition with its empty seater
Ricoh Arena
that it's like
shambles that it
was.
No.
You get the team. We're not big enough to sustain
neutral venues
for semi-finals, and in fact few sports are. Like in soccer, the Champions League semi-finals, whatever, they're happening at the moment, and they obviously have the luxury, it being not as traditional a sport, of having home and away legs.
Yes.
So they can play 4 games in 2 weeks, where you very can't do that in rugby.
Yes.
But they acknowledge that a neutral venue is finals only. You can't have a neutral venue for a semi-final. People aren't going to travel in the numbers for that.
Indeed.
It's crazy.
Especially if it's a neutral venue in Coventry, where no trains go apparently.
To see the world's ugliest stadium.
Stadium's
ousts the cake tin as the world's worst stadium.
You really don't like cake tin.
The cake tin is a hideous ground as well.
It was abysmal. And the Challenge Cup, speaking of discussing that, it looked much better.
It looked sensational.
You want that. You want to have the colour and the noise of also, the home teams. Also, in keeping with what the NFL do, I don't mind, a lot of people talking about neutral venues more fair. I think it's more fair that whoever did really well in the groups has the right to a semi-final.
In fact, you would have said back in the day, but whoever gets the Italian team, etc., etc. But that has actually, with the narrowing down of the tournament, every pool is tough. If you finish top seed, you've earned it.
Indeed.
And so absolutely, I agree with you. And in the NFL, whatever, even in the AFC and NFC championship games, there's a hosting team. The team with the best record gets to host that match.
Host it.
It's true of all sports, and I think they should stick with it in rugby, because the colour of those two semi-finals was great. And it is true that a theme of this year has been sort of muted crowds, and that does come from, as much as we admire Saracens on the field and everything Mark McCall has done, their fan base is not in the elite tier.
No, it's
Leicester
not.
Tigers have obviously free fall down.
Indeed.
One of the best fan bases. And then La Rochelle and Clermont competing in the Challenge Cup are two teams we would be delighted to see in the top tier competition, and would very be game for making knockout rounds of that competition. They're very good teams. It's going to be a fun game, even if it is going to be, because in James's Park and because it's a Challenge Cup final, there's not going to be a huge crowd there. but I think it's going to be a very fun game.
Yeah. I hope to be pleasantly surprised. I hope you're proven wrong on that, but I suspect you're probably right.
Yeah.
Well, unless they're like handing out tickets for a $5.
I hope they will. Hope they do that.
You know,
hope they do that.
What they should do.
Yeah.
Load of freebies, fill those seats,
Yeah.
get the tiers
That's
open.
what Saracens used to do when they used to go to Wembley.
Yeah.
They
It's
used to
like
just-
$5 ticket and whatnot. And
Yeah.
stand up.
Yeah.
Saracens.
That was kind of a weird era for them.
It
though.
was
They're
a
playing
bit.
games in Belgium.
Yeah, that's a
That's
bit
a step
mental.
too far.
Yeah, no, we won't be doing semi-final, quarterfinals in Belgium, everybody.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for that.
I'm excited for the spectacle of rugby the two attacking teams are going to put on show, and my suspicion is Clermont will get the better of it
Clermont
in a final.
to win a final.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's a Challenge Cup.
It's a
final,
Challenge
I know,
Cup final.
but it's still a final.
It's discount final.
It's still a
They'll
final.
be okay.
They'll be discount Clermont.
They'll be okay. They'll be okay. They'll save their meltdown for the business end of the top tours.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
But that's I don't know. You're going against all historical precedent to say that Clermont to win a final, says Daragh.
Fair enough. They won a Bouclier in 2010.
They did. 2010 though, even that's nearly a decade ago now.
It is. It is.
Oh my god, they're such a good team. They're horrendous.
Was it 2010 or 2011? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, we love Clermont, by the way. Leinster fans tend to really rate Clermont and really want them to win any tournament that we're not involved in.
Yeah,
and it's painful to watch because you always get the feeling that they're going to blow it at some
100%.
point. They're going to blow it. And it seems to be built into the DNA of the club as much as beautiful attacking rugby at Christmas is.
Yeah, it's all true. Look at that team. They can't blow it. They're just going to score loads of tries, surely.
But we were even watching was it Northampton they were playing?
Right.
And they were like 30 points clear with like 15 minutes to go.
They have played there
and then
like,
pressed the implode button.
Toulouse are playing beautiful attacking rugby, and it's kind of like the perfect iteration of what that can be. Clermont's is definitely a little clunkier and is coming with a lot more mad moments. It's a lot more, it's not just hectic, it's uncontrolled, chaotic, and comes with a load of try concessions. And
plus they do have a Van Mahina in there, which is still a problem for any team, I would say. Like they have an Aturia, which is good.
The Aturia is very good,
you know.
But they're making a lot of tries. They have Raka back, they have Fofana, like there's a lot of good there.
So much good
Pinot.
there. Pinot has been fire, actually. He's been lighting up that tournament because he's international quality class, and he's just head and shoulders
and really settling into being a winger and embracing it, and
is
looking good.
He reminds me a little of Tommy Bow. He actually does.
Tommy Bow
reminds me a little of him. He kind of glides similarly, and he does glide. He can play 13 creditably, but is a dangerous winger when he's out there all the time. Covers the high field very well. He looks quality. He's definitely one for the World Cup,
and maybe one who wrestled them to a final victory with a try in spite of everything.
In spite of everything, that would be nice. They're trying desperately to blow it, but Pinot won't have it. Yeah, that would be nice. I like that picture a lot. But we'll see.
God, they as you say, like it almost didn't occur to me because it's the Challenge Cup. It's not your A final, but it's like they probably do need to win it. They do. It'll hurt them again if they lose this. Even though it's just a Challenge Cup, that's not the point. Unquestionably, once again, been the best team in this tournament, and they're now failed to win. Yeah, so they need to. They
did that before. I think it was the year before they knocked us out. It was like 2011. Didn't they get to the final of the Challenge Cup in 2011 because they were in our group?
I don't know. They won a Bouclier and then they started taking Europe seriously. But it might have been 2011.
I think it was 2011 because in 2012 Leinster.
Well, they first played us in 2010 when Brock James missed that kick in the RDS, and then we went on to the semi-finals to lose. Then
in 2011
next year we had them in the pool. We
knocked them out. They went into the Challenge Cup from there. Got I think as far as the final and lost.
Right.
And then the year after they did the same to us. We got them in the group. They knocked us out.
No, the year after we won again and beat them in
yeah.
Bordeaux in the semi-final.
Right.
And all the legend continued. And then the year after that, they beat us home and away, got their own back. We went on to win the Challenge Cup. They went on to lose in Dublin. To Toulon.
We were everyone there in Dublin just rooting for them, and instead we had to watch Dell and Armitage running away with the trophy.
Yeah.
No.
Indeed, and a happy Boujala, which is always a negative.
It's a terrible picture.
Yeah. But that's a long time ago.
It is it's ancient history now.
But that's where the Leinster-Clermont relationship formed, and that's kind of where Clermont in Europe built this just ongoing reputation for not being able to win things when it comes to the business end. So it is a curious game in that picture. That one's on Friday night. and certainly is worth a watch.
I would say so, because it's just going to be beautiful rugby anyway. Regardless of all these other factors. Definitely give it a look see. And if you're near St James's Park, if you're near Newcastle, get out to it. 100%, go and watch it because it'll be class. Other news we have is there were a few other ones. There's
London Irish have
been on a spending spree.
The obviously newsmakers Paddy Jackson, and we don't really want to tell him, but we're not massively overzealous. I think he was fired for a reason, and sort of bringing him semi back into the fold with European rugby, and then with Irish rugby, because they have that Irish link, is probably a negative. But he's coming in to play some rugby for them.
Obviously Sean O'Brien's going there.
Rugby-based reasons for that call seem baffling to me, in terms of Paddy Jackson has been just having an awful season with Perpignan,
and even
losing
prior to that, even though he was in Ireland prior to
that he had his year off, and then prior to that he was just bottling everything.
He's terrible. I've never rated him. He was the second choice to Sexton for quite a while. My prevailing memory of him on the pitch is an attacking set that goes good phase, and then Paddy Jackson picks the wrong pass to a man who gets crunched behind the game line, and then it's start again. That's my prevailing picture of how his attacks go.
Yeah, so that's definitely a weird signing. There's a lot about London Irish that makes me think that it's going to go wrong. And
the fact that it's Declan
Kidney and Les Kiss, the old Irish dream team of horrors past.
One Grand Slam defeats from basically Eddie O'Sullivan's team, but with a new lease of life.
And with a bit of a kick up the hole and a bit of a we're a team now.
Yeah, which was good man management, but then when it came down to the actual coaching and building and World Cup cycle, which was the next year and year and year, dreadful. Yeah,
dreadful. And those two did harm when they were there, and while they were in the Ireland job, and I suspect it's not going to go well for them again. They do have they're trying to get a nice Irish identity to them.
Which is
they're
probably
replacing of Topsy Ojo, which is the other big news. Topsy Ojo is retiring, and the replacing of him with Waisaki Naholo is probably a step up.
It is
to say the least.
Thorough step up. Waisaki Naholo.
That is a
steal for them.
Incredible signing.
I can't quite fathom how that's managed to happen. It'll be Sean O'Brien offloads to Paddy Jackson to Witten to Naholo. What?
Is it Witten up there?
I think Witten.
Brendan Mackin. I know.
Oh, is it Mackin? Okay, yeah. Another quality he's actually former Leinster man though.
Yes,
Witten is still with Exeter, maybe.
I have no idea where Witten is.
I think so.
What he's doing.
But yeah. So that'll be a mad mix. Naholo out there, will he get a little telepathy going on?
I don't know.
Sean O'Brien
it's definitely
Naholo.
The best news to come out of there, because an aged Sean O'Brien with controversial / not particularly good Paddy Jackson, and that's controversial to say the least. And then some middling Irish players, a questionable coaching ticket, and then all of a sudden Waisaki Naholo could be a game changer, but he could also be isolated as Piatow has been in teams gone by.
So many.
It could be a negative for him, but that's London Irish are making a move to try and stay in the Premiership for sure.
This is it,
and that'll be a curious picture for next season. Next season we will not be graced with the presence perhaps on our European TV screens with the great Matthew Bastareaud, because in cool news and interesting news, and potentially the very beginning of a shaking up of the established order in domestic rugby, Matthew Bastareaud is off to play in the Major League Rugby for, I don't know, the New York whatever he does. The New York didgeridoos.
Yes. And, but that is interesting. That is an interesting precedent set, you're right in saying, because I don't know how old Matthew Bastareaud is, but
old enough to continue young enough rather to continue playing.
This is it. So I'd imagine for the first couple of seasons, he's just going to be tearing it up, a la Zlatan in that football league.
Well, by all accounts, young Cathal Marsh, from Leinster, who was fourth choice 10. I always rated him, but he's gone off to play in that league, and by all accounts, he's tearing it up, making player of the months and everything else. Yeah. So Bastareaud surely will not be dealt with.
No, they won't be able to handle that.
Yeah.
Some of those kind of mediocre club level centres just getting.
You talk about the Major League Soccer that they have over there, where they have whatever LA Galaxy. That's essentially what they want Major League Rugby to be on that level. They're just they're not even there yet, but that's the ambition, because that's a pretty big league. They get some big names. It gets some eyeballs. It's something that players like to win and go and do.
And that's it's only the first year, isn't it, of the Major League Rugby this year?
I think second.
Is it second? Okay, and it's just growth phase. They're trying to pilfer a few players from over
The only problem that they have is they're competing with a Japanese league that's doing the exact same thing with the Kiwi boys in the Pacific.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a little harder to siphon off
France.
The Super Rugby players. Yeah.
We'll just go to South Africa where they just produce endless players.
Yeah,
so you can just get a load of them over.
But what they really want is stars. And Bastareaud is someone you can certainly brand as a star.
For
whether
sure.
or not he is.
Should be getting some Fijians.
Yeah.
Get some Fijians in there.
They will. I mean, there's plenty of them.
Yeah.
So that's just an interesting little...
It is. I think that is, like you're saying, it could be the beginnings of just a new look to things. When the Major League Rugby over there starts to have teams that consist of you're looking at a few former players from a few nationalities.
They have some work to do with the guys who are working in that league on grassroots level, just getting bums on seats, getting people caring and going to these games.
Yeah.
They're doing a decent job so far, but they need to keep it up and sort of, if they can get crowds that are comparable to Pro 14 crowds at the game of whatever 4,000 to 5,000 for these games, that'd be massive. It'd be huge for them. And then obviously there's the next thing of broadcasting it and getting it watched. But I mean, there's infinite ways in the modern world to broadcast these things, whether you want to stream it or whether you want to go through whoever will take it. There's a lot of... It's all up in the air, but there's a lot of potential there. It all sort of hangs on whether or not they can get some grassroots support from American towns and cities.
Yeah, some more so than others. Obviously, I think Texas is a bit of a hot
Texas, they like it. Yeah, they go and see the American games up in Texas and in California as well.
And watch the Sevens when it comes around as well.
In Vegas. So out there southwest, I guess, and that seems to be a hotbed for it.
But yeah, it's the beginnings of phase. Get America involved, and it's a better way of doing it than just randomly throwing hodgepodge games or try and come up with this international league that's going to have the states getting hammered by a load of boys. No, none of that. You have to get their own grassroots first and then build from there, from the ground up, as Leinster put it. Which is
100%.
Good. Yeah.
And James Haskell, our podcast competitor,
yes, indeed,
is retiring from rugby to full-time take us on.
Yes, House of Rugby.
House of Rugby, that's his one, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Yeah, no, I like Haskell, and he's been a stalwart servant.
He's been a very solid player, and he's been everywhere. He went and played Super Rugby, he went and played France for a bit, so he's had a great career, and he's going to be...
he's been a Lion.
He's been a Lion.
It's probably one of the highlights of his career, certainly.
But he's
got to room with Sean O'Brien and torment him.
He's been a thoroughly colourful character on the World Rugby arena now for the guts of a decade, and he'll be a good servant to the game in his own way, and a pretty nifty player when he got going. I mean, he had his negatives. I never thought he was a 7.
No,
he was
they
put
kept
at 7
him at 7
a lot.
I never thought
he was never a 7.
He's not the right body type for it.
Yeah, but he was a good back row forward, a good 6, and well worth a career, well worth looking back on with pride and happiness.
Sure. I was even looking at a few of the House of Rugby things, and he was talking all year about getting back, but it felt like, it was a reach. He was in rehab mode, but wasn't necessarily going well, was what my inference was anyway, from just the way he was saying what he was saying. But he was optimistic initially around Christmas, reviewing games, but thinking he's going to be back in the mix, and it seems to have not worked out for him, which does just happen. Like, he's such a nutritional player. Like, the back row is
and sometimes something goes wrong with your body, and then you just can't get it right, and it'll never be right, and you can't.
Well, considering what right means for these guys,
you can't do what a game of rugby does to your knee.
You
can't do that to your knee anymore because your knee's whatever. I'm not sure if it's a knee, but that's just an example.
Exactly. You may be able to live a perfectly healthy life and go hiking and whatnot, but it's just
what a game of rugby does to it. You can't do that anymore.
Exactly. So best of luck to him in his retirement, and was an absolute great servant.
And just before we wrap up, we have some World Cup news. Scotland have sort of preemptively gone and picked a World Cup squad out of nowhere.
It seems a bit
in early May. Gregor, calm down.
Gregor's just getting excited.
He's getting all excited. He can't sleep. He just wants to name. So they named a provisional squad of 43 players with an option to add a couple more. And the only real news is that the omissions of Duncan Weir and Richie Gray.
Duncan Weir is at Worcester now.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised by his omission.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Richie Gray, though, has been having a great season.
Third choice 10 for them. Peter Horn.
Peter Horn.
Blech.
but I would argue Duncan Weir, bluch, even more.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
So yeah, you have your Finn is all you're putting all your eggs in the Finn basket anyway, and then Hastings is like a little diet Finn. Should that go wrong, and then Horn is a bit more so like he's
an even dieter,
but it's a similar mold, you know. It's all based on the Finn. Game
but
plan.
That's the thing, is that it's not going to work without Finn because he's the man who picks the passes and does the things.
It's true.
But so Duncan Weir's not a massive omission, but Richie Gray's a questionable one.
He is, he's had a great season for Toulouse.
He's looking good and fit.
Toulouse are playing loose attacking rugby as well. He's involved in a good attacking side, so you'd think Scotland want to be a good
he's exclusively a second row, and they do have a lot of them.
True.
So they've gone for probably Skinner, can play either from Exeter, and then they also have Gilchrist and Toulouse and Johnny Gray.
Yeah,
so
it's true. Yeah,
competitive area.
Competitive for them. Yeah, they have a lot of quality.
Yeah.
It's a weird one to name it this soon though, and lots changed.
I just wonder if is anyone else going to follow suit? Is this something that's going to happen now?
I don't know. I don't know why it would. It's all kinds of work, World Cup warm.
I feel like they need to be going on a bit of holiday.
Well, Glasgow haven't even played their last 2 games.
Yeah, and Edinburgh need a break. Need a break.
It's mental. But the other thing that was named for the World Cup, which I suppose makes more sense naming it this far out, is the refs, the officials for the thing. And it's kind of the usual suspects. A few questionable inclusions as well as questionable omissions.
There's definitely a load of French in there. Poit, Reynal, Gozer, Garcez. That's 4 French referees, at the expense of a nice little Marius Maitreya from Italy, who I feel like has probably deserved it.
Well, considering Poit shouldn't be there at all from where we're sitting at. I don't know what World Rugby
Roman
has
Poit
going on.
And Andre Ruiz as an assistant ref, and Jaco Piper are for me the most questionable calls. Apparently Glenn Jackson's upset and is thinking about changing job after it. He's not the biggest omission though for me. That is Marius. The only thing is that for final contenders we have probably Garcez, Wayne Barnes, Angus Gardner and Nigel Owens, and they're all very good refs. Yeah. And Wayne Barnes would be the front runner, I think, to get the final. Yeah. Because he's probably not got too many years left in him.
True. And barring England making a run and getting to the final, I would think Wayne Barnes probably. I wouldn't begrudge him.
No.
I would begrudge Poit. You can't give him big games. I begrudge him being there. He's ruined too many good big games. See Lions Tour for reference, many others.
Yeah, the Bismarck Duplessis red card, and then Leinster Pro 12 final back in the day against Bastareaud. Highland Cup final in 2011 he wasn't great in. So he's had a lot of bad days.
Big days.
Yeah, bad big days. Yeah, for sure. And he won't. Surely he won't be put in charge of the final. I don't think he's a true contender. I think Garcez is, and I think
you say that, but like every time I see him have a reffing game, I'm like, well, that's it. They have to get rid of him now. It's just too bad. Like that's his last game ever reffing at the top tier, and then he's just there next week. Yeah, and it's like, why? We make deal, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I do think ultimately that 4 that I named are probably just the top tier. Yeah. But there's always a danger of Jaco or Roman getting a big game, which you wouldn't like.
It's going to be scary the week of when you're reading who's our ref for the big game.
There are some good refs in there as well. Though Gozer I don't dislike, Ben O'Keefe I don't dislike. Luke Pearson, Nick Berry haven't done much to offend me. So it's a fine crop of officials. And the bigger question, even than just the individual officials, is whether they clarify what's going on with the rules. If they're going to change any rules, or if they're going to go in with rules. They have to do that soon. They have to make it, as soon as the season ends, they have to make it eminently clear what's going to be okay, what's not going to be okay.
Are we going to be hearing more words like dynamic? And what's some of those ones in terms of collisions?
Yeah, it's contacts in the air.
Intent.
And contacts with shoulders. Is intent a factor? Is it not a factor? What constitutes a dangerous tackle? Like the last thing that they want is a big negative headline from this World Cup around dangerous contacts with the whole thing about concussion. But they also don't want negative headlines about a crazy red card that ruined a game.
Yes, indeed.
So it's a difficult balance to get, and they need everybody, referees, assistant referees, TMOs, and players, and coaches to be on the same page about what you can and can't do, and that needs to be done.
Well, quickly. One thing that seems to have changed is that the Cipriani precedent that was set at the start of the season has been changed.
Yeah, thoroughly.
Because I think that was a mistake by your man.
No, but my point is that it wasn't just a mistake. Like it was that rule taken to its farcical extreme. But in the early runnings of the Pro 14, they had well established that in a tackle, if your shoulder makes contact with the head, it's red.
Yeah.
They had established that is the rule this year. And now it just seems like every time something like that happens, like refs are chatting to TMOs about all kinds of mitigating factors.
Indeed.
He was kind of dipping and stumbling and falling and rolling. I don't know.
Did he intend to do it? I don't know if he did.
Can we ask him?
Yeah. You didn't mean that, did you? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, what is the law?
Yeah,
Come on.
exactly.
Actually, it was relieving to see in that Sarries game again, the Sarries Exeter one, where there was a contact in the air that was a bad tackle from
and your man came down on his
side, and the ref just said exactly what the law.
Yeah, the ref was chatting to the TMO. The guy came down on his side, and some of the commentators were like, I think that could be red. It's really violent or whatever. And he was just like, they articulated the law as I understand it to be true, and then gave a decision.
Yellow card.
Based on that, and it was a yellow card because he came down on his side, not his head, and I was like,
it was hitting the
that's
air,
my first
mid-timed.
experience of a in any game in recent weeks of a dangerous tackle incident where the refs are speaking the language that I understand to be the law.
Indeed, without throwing in mad words,
just crazy mitigating. I don't know what.
So that's what we want to avoid in terms of the World Cup.
Yeah,
we want to get that clear
confusion.
Yeah.
It's like, because like one ref is just like, no, shoulder to the head is red, and the next week it's like, but he was dipping and moving and weaving, and then it's like, so it's not a red.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so what was that first ref on about? Who's right? And
I don't know.
That's what they need to clarify, and that all needs to be done ahead of the World Cup. But ultimately, we're getting ahead of ourselves. This week is not about the World Cup.
It's not about the World Cup.
It's about Leinster. It's about Saracens. It's about the game of
European showcase of rugby.
Yeah, the two best teams in Europe are going at it in the final, and it's
finally
not every year that you can say that.
This is it. Yeah. They've missed each other for the last few years, with the exception of last year. But it was a different quarter-final away from home.
The very fact that Saracens didn't win a home quarter-final will tell you that they were a little off where they usually would be.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Whereas this year
they did have Clermont in their group, though. That was their irritating.
Talking
journey.
about mitigating factors.
Yeah.
As opposed to Glasgow.
This year.
Yeah.
Who were nowhere near as pernickety.
It's true. It's true. But so it's going to be some showcase of rugby. He's going to be at it, unfortunately. I'm going to be watching from
Second
here.
Second final in a row, baby.
Yeah, good man. But yeah.
Fourth final overall. No, fifth. Toulouse, Perpignan, Leinster, Northampton.
Oh yeah, we did
Toulon, Clermont, and Leinster Racing, Leinster Saracens. 5 of the European finals I've been at. That's a good humble brag. Not humble brag. There's
it's
an arrogant brag.
Humble brag.
It's just a brag.
Get that humble out of there.
I was just thinking, is there a word that'll soften the bragging that I'm doing? But no, there isn't really.
Git. So we'll be enjoying it. One more so than the other.
Yep.
Depending on how it goes, I suppose. Though it could be a long.
I'll find a way to enjoy it. I made a pact because every final there's great colour. Like I had made a pact to go to this game whether Leinster were going to be in it or not, because there's a part of me that really wants to do what all the blue and lovely Toulouse fans always seem to be doing, showing up in their Toulouse jerseys but cheering us on and adding colour to the whole party that is the European final, and I'm happy to do that no matter what happens.
But we won't be doing what certain Munster fans might be doing, which is turning up and cheering for Saracens.
No, I wouldn't be doing that. If Munster were against Saracens, I'd wear my Leinster jersey and maybe wave an Irish flag, but I just the rugby fan in me can't cheer for Munster.
But the Irishman has to. This is the point.
Yeah.
This is my point about anyone. And if there's any Munster fans watching this, any Munster fan who goes to a Leinster game and cheers for the opposition who's not from Ireland, that's unpatriotic. What are you doing? Like, I look at Munster and think, what a horrible team. If they weren't from Ireland, I could never cheer for them. They play no rugby. They cheat often.
If Munster
and
played Clermont, are you cheering for Munster? Genuinely?
Yeah. I want them to win the game ultimately.
I don't think so.
Yeah, because I'm Irish.
I want Ireland to win, but I'm like they're not like my team, and they like I would cheer for them if they played good rugby. But they're just playing muck rugby and getting loads of referee indecisions and fouling and not attacking and somehow crawling over the line against admirable teams, and there's nothing good about any of it.
No, so, this is it. I'm torn with it, the rugby fan, but I would never ever go to a Munster match and cheer for a team not from Ireland against them.
I wouldn't avidly cheer, but I would be somewhat neutral.
Yeah.
To be honest. Anyway, listen, we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, that was an aside.
It was very much an aside.
But we're delighted to be back. We're going to try and get back and review the game after it all goes down. However, may the best team win, I suppose, but may that team be Leinster.
Hopefully. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll come back and look back on it anyway, one way or another.
100%.
Yeah. And thanks very much, guys.
See you, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, now it's bad audio, but you're up.
Here's a bad audio throw, guys. Miss to boot.
Oh, 2. Bad audio, bad throws.
Yeah, that kind of goosed us there.
Yeah.